If you're a UK director worried about insolvency, debts piling up and pressure from creditors, stop right now because I'm about to show you some real life examples other directors have made costing them more than just money. Every single year, thousands of company directors across the UK face insolvency and severe financial stress. And sadly, many directors unknowingly make critical mistakes that turn business debts into personal liabilities, and sometimes it can cost them everything. But here's the thing, most of the time these mistakes are completely avoidable. In this video, I'm going to share a couple of powerful real life stories of UK directors who got it wrong. You'll see exactly what mistakes they made, the consequences they faced, and you'll clearly understand how you can repeat these areas. Okay, now over the next, 10, 15, 20 minutes, you're going to learn a number of things. I'm going to give you a couple of real life examples that directors make when they're under pressure, and I'm going to go through exactly how these mistakes turns manageable company issues into crippling personal debts. The real life stories that vividly illustrate each mistake. I'm obviously going to change the name to protect the person. But crucially, I'm going to also tell you what they should have done instead to protect themselves, okay? It's Chris Worden, I'm from Director First. Every single week, I help directors in crisis. Good, honest people, just like you, caught in overwhelming situations. And I've seen firsthand the heartbreaking consequences that directors face when they accidentally step over the legal lines or they don't get proper advice. Now, I've also seen lots of directors avoid these mistakes because they watch a funny looking man on YouTube and they give us a call here at Director First and we advise them and they successfully protect themselves personally and the families, and in some cases they're able to restart the businesses and restart their lives stronger, and it's simply by understanding what not to do and taking action early. Now if you're feeling stressed, worried or uncertain right now, stick with me because this video could quite literally save your future. And here is exactly what we're going to cover it today. I'm going to give you at least two real life stories, each highlighting a common avoidable mistake. I'm going to give you practical, clear lessons you can immediately apply and a step-by-step guide on what to do instead. And finally, like always on these videos, an action plan you can start following today. So I want to start with this. I want to share a powerful true story of a UK director so you can avoid repeating the painful mistakes. Let's call this director Henry, okay? Henry had a events business. He had a little team that he'd employed for a long time. Everything seemed stable, okay? Until two things happened. COVID and the cost of living crisis. And due to these market conditions, he started to lose contracts. Things didn't happen when they was meant to happen. People were backing out of jobs. His costs were high. Revenues were falling. Suddenly the cash flow dried up. This is what Henry did wrong. Obviously, he's robbing Peter to pay Paul. He's got staff's wages. He took some pretty onerous loans that he personally guaranteed in 2021. And he started missing VAT and PAYE payments, okay? HMRC letters piled up. He did not want to look at them. And instead of seeking advice immediately, he had that thought that things will improve. You know, I remember myself, you know, when my business went into insolvency, if you'd have come in to see me in that final 6 months, even though all the signs were there that this business was over, the game had changed, all the big players had pulled out, I've read that much personal development. I'm dangerous with it. I've just realised my sign's not on. There we go, that's better. Now, we're taught to think positively. That can be a real hindrance in these scenarios because Henry just wanted the problem to go away. He thought somehow it would resolve itself. Now, we spoke to him and we told him what he really needed to do. And it was to get the business into liquidation. There were some assets that he could have bought out of liquidation for a very nominal fee and start again. He was actually going to scale down to pretty much just him and his missus, was going to make everyone else redundant. And I told him, I says, be careful how you take your money out of this business now, Henry, because you had an overdrawn loan account last year. So if you're going to take money out, because I get it, you're working, you've got to provide for the kids, you've got to pay the mortgage, you've got to change how you're paying yourself. You can't be taking dividends out of this company anymore, because everything that you take out that isn't salary, if you end up in insolvency, the insolvency practitioner is going to go, that is an illegal dividend, and I'm going to reclassify it on your director's loan, and you're going to be asked to repay it back. Okay? Anyway, we just didn't hear off Henry for a while. You know, we don't take those things personally, but we get nobody really wants to be speaking to somebody like me. But months later, a winding up petition arrived from HMRC. And even then he didn't deal with it. He went to court, got an adjournment himself, and still didn't reach out for advice. And he rang us a couple of days before the court date. And we tried to get him representation. The judge went, no, you've had one chance, we're winding you up. And it got forced into compulsory liquidation. And then instead of him finding a liquidator and doing this voluntarily, it was forced into liquidation and the official receiver was appointed. And the official receiver basically dug in to what had gone on. And the two big problems that Henry faced were his overdrawn loan account was now at £100,000. And the problem was he had a family home with quite a lot of equity in. And he's actually, I mean, his wife have had to remortgage the family home to pay back a really high settlement on his director's loan account. The stress was immense. It strained him, it strained his family relationships, and it severely impacted his mental health. Now, I've touched base with Henry from time to time just to see how he is, and he just wished he'd have acted sooner. Because if he did, I'm not saying that his director's loan account would have gone away. It would have still been there. But if he'd have took my advice at the start, his director's loan account wouldn't have got up to 100 grand. And if he'd have took my advice that liquidation was probably the best scenario, he would have been able to come to some type of arrangement with the insolvency practitioner, where he probably would have still had to refinance his house, but he'd have got a deal done with a insolvency practitioner than the official receiver, and that's a fact. And also, he's had these personal guaranteed debts to deal with, and the problem is the business is over. It's capitulated. He's had to get a job. If he'd have took my advice and bought the assets back and started again, at least he'd have been bringing money in to pay these personally guaranteed debts, and he would have been able to restructure those PGs over the next few years. Now, it's clear now what you should learn from Henry's painful mistake. Lesson 1, never ignore insolvency warning signs. If you're missing VAT, you're missing PAYE, you're missing corporation tax payments, HMRC are going to do something, okay? When your creditors are pressing you, when they are threatening you, okay, it's a sign you're insolvent, okay? And they're going to do something unless you act immediately. And it leads on to lesson 2. You've got to act fast. Professional advice early is critical, because if you use the ostrich method, the debt problem will never resolve itself. It will just multiply your risk, because the earlier that you seek qualified help, the more options and the more protection potentially that you've got. And lesson 3, you've got to understand your legal duty as a director once you're insolvent. Remember, your company is insolvent when it can't pay its debts, when it's full due, when its liabilities are more than its assets, or if someone's taken legal action against you. Once you are insolvent as a company, your legal duty shifts from growing your business to protecting your creditors. Now, continuing to trade while ignoring insolvency significantly increases your personal risk. Now, One of the things that I told Henry to do back then was stop taking dividends. The company is insolvent. He could have still took a reasonable salary if he had a good enough rationale as to why he was continuing to trade. But he didn't take that advice. And the official receiver looked unfavourably on that. And yeah, the outcome is, you know, it's been a very painful lesson. Now, the situation wasn't completely avoidable, but it could have been de-risked, it could have been mitigated significantly if he'd have clearly understood early warning signs and not just took advice, because he took advice and then bloody disappeared. You've then got to act on the advice that you've been given. And I'm not saying jump into bed with the first insolvency advisor. Don't. Even if it's me, I'm the first person you speak to. Go and speak to someone else. Get a feel for them. Get a feel for as many as you can, because it's such a big position, it's such a big decision. Now, as a result of him not doing what we suggested, his personal finances are in the bin, his personal relationships are in the bin, and his mental health has been in the toilet. Now, hopefully, he's sort of coming round now. But big lessons here. Now, I want to tell you about someone else called Sarah. Another good, hard-working UK director with a young family whose story could save you from a catastrophic mistake. Now, Sarah ran a business, like thousands and thousands of business. COVID hit her revenues hard, okay? So she obviously took a bounce-back loan. She converted the bounce-back loan into a C-bills. She didn't pay HMRC for a couple of years because HMRC were almost saying, well, don't pay us, don't pay us. And eventually, the piper needed to get paid, okay? Now, under pressure, she actually went out there, even though that she was insolvent, and she knew in her heart of hearts she isn't going to recover from this. To keep going, she borrowed money off her friends and family, and she took over £200,000 in personally guaranteed debt. And what she did, it was to keep the business going, because that entrepreneurial spirit, I'm going to get out of this, you know, writing affirmations, gratitude list. She was another avid fan of personal development like myself. But what she didn't fully understand was, if this business fails, okay, friends and family aren't going to get paid, and all these personal liability debts are going to crystallise and fall on her. And eventually, she had to call it a day. The market she was in was over. And what happened is, when the business went into liquidation, the creditors are there. Some of the major creditors were actually her friends and family. And to make matters worse, the personally guaranteed debts, that if she'd have called it a day at the start, okay, she'd have lost her business. And that is sad. But she wouldn't have owed her friends and family a significant amount of money. And she wouldn't have 200 grand's worth of personally guaranteed debt landing on her. And here's what this painful experience can hopefully teach you. Lesson one is, if you believe, if you're going to take on more debt from that's personally guaranteed with your neck on the line, you have got to be 100% sure that this business is going to survive. I've seen it time and time again that people look at things with rose-tinted glasses. They eventually go through a process because it's just not worked out. And they all say the same thing: I wish I'd have done this 2 years ago, without putting all this personal risk in there. Lesson two, again, you've got to see things as they are. Do not see things worse than they are or better than they are. And you have got to have a real stone cold, ruthless view on how your business is performing. And if it's not working, okay, if your business is no longer going to be profitable and you don't believe that you can get through to the other side, so maybe it's time to call it a day early. Because the debt you're going to be able to take on, okay, that's going to help you support when you become insolvent is going to be debt that you're going to have to personally guarantee. And if you've got to personally guarantee this type of debt, you've got to be sure that it's going to work. Now, I've given you some real life stories. I've obviously changed the directors' names of directors who suffered unnecessary personal liability. They were avoidable mistakes. And this is exactly what you should do to clearly avoid making the same costly errors. Step one, seek professional advice immediately. The first sign of financial trouble, missing HMRC, growing debts, robbing Peter to pay Paul, dodging phone calls, get confidential insolvency advice. Early advice gives you the greatest protection and the most amount of options. Step two, you need to understand clearly when you're insolvent. And it just means you can't pay your debts on time or your liabilities exceed your assets. Because once you're insolvent, your legal obligations immediately change. Creditors must come first. Step three, if you're insolvent, you need to stop taking dividends. Okay, literally your business is not profitable because it's insolvent. Therefore, there are no, you're not going to be able to declare a dividend at the end of the year. If you need to pay yourself, speak to your accountant, go through PAYE. Okay, you've got to respect the legal line between company funds and personal funds. And I get it, you might have to cut your cloth accordingly. Step four, if it is the end of the line, always do it voluntary. Always put the business through a voluntary process as opposed to a compulsory process. Because the first thing an official receiver is going to look at if they're winding you up is, well, you should have acted sooner. The first thing they're going to pull into question is your conduct. And a voluntary insolvency will always yield better results for the director than a compulsory. And that's the facts. So for many directors now who are facing debts and facing pressure, generally a liquidation is the best, safest route. Because a liquidation voluntarily is where you appoint a liquidator. You go out there and you find someone that you want to work with. It doesn't have to be me. We work with some great liquidators up and down the country, but you've got to do your own due diligence. And then you'll appoint them as a liquidator and creditor action stops immediately. No bailiffs, no winding up petitions, constant pressure should go. And then they'll do an orderly wind down of the company. And if you've acted properly, there's no personal liability. You should remain safe. Liquidations, they're legal and they're successfully used by thousands of directors every single year. So my advice to you today, if anything that I've said is causing you concern or it resonates immediately, it resonates with you, I want you to pick the phone up. Pick the phone up today. And this is what you should do over the next few weeks to protect your finances and ensure your future's secure. Okay, today, if you're insolvent, stop taking dividends, okay? Don't take any more loans. Pick the phone up to somebody who you can talk to about insolvency. List all your debts, including suppliers, HMRC loans. Let's have a look at how bad this situation. And then you've got to have the decision and go, am I ever going to get through this? What needs to happen today for me to come out the other side? And if you don't think you're past the point of no return, then you've got to pick the phone up. You've got to pick the phone up to somebody like me to discuss what your options are. It'll be a confidential meeting. We will go through the various options that you've got and we'll clearly clarify the best route for you. And then once you've done that, you can make an official appointment of an insolvency practitioner. You can begin the proceedings formally, and that protects you and creditors. And following these steps, okay, should remove fear, uncertainty and stress. If you need some help, okay, we offer free, independent and impartial advice. You've got two paths ahead of you. Option one's do nothing. That is where you risk liability. That's where you risk losing your business, sometimes your home. Or option two, act immediately and get the right advice. If you're ready to take action, Direct-to-First is here to help you every single step of the way. Subscribe for more clear, practical advice. Drop questions below and I'll personally respond to them. But most importantly, if you're stressed, overwhelmed or uncertain right now, don't wait. Reach out today. Thanks for your time. God bless you.